John and Emily had been together for nearly a decade. They lived in Dayton, Ohio, in a quiet neighborhood with similar-looking houses, discreet neighbors, and a predictable routine. They had a young daughter, 5 years old, who was the center of their lives. John worked as a supervisor at a logistics company, while Emily managed the household, cared for their daughter, and did some online work as a style consultant. Their marriage seemed stable. There were no constant fights, no serious arguments, no major emotional distance. It was the kind of relationship that gave the impression of balance, even when the routine felt heavier. Emily was a communicative woman, naturally good at pleasing others, with a gift for words and a natural charisma. Her mother-in-law adored her. John's mother always said he was fortunate to have her. Emily was kind to neighbors, polite with friends, and nothing about her stood out negatively. She had a firm stance on fidelity, declaring she could never understand people who cheated. If she were ever unhappy, she'd rather end things than lie. John believed her, not just because of her words, but because of how she lived. Emily was present at home, involved in her daughter's life, and participated in everything. She organized birthday parties, stayed in touch with their daughter's teachers, and still made time for herself without overdoing it. She seemed to have found the perfect balance. Once a month, usually on a Friday, Emily would go out to dinner with her cousin or a close friend. These were casual, simple meetups that had been part of their routine for years. She always gave John a heads up, told him where she was going, texted when she arrived, and let him know when she planned to return. There was never any secrecy or strange delays. John never thought to question it. He trusted her completely and even thought it was nice that Emily maintained this habit without hiding anything or making excuses. To him, it was proof of maturity in their relationship. Emily made sure to maintain that image. On regular days, she was calm. She didn't live on her phone, didn't act mysteriously, and gave no reason for insecurity. Everything seemed in place. Emily woke up early, took her daughter to school, returned home, handled chores, attended to her clients, and prepared dinner. At night, they'd watch series together or talk about their day. There was routine, yes, but also lightness, companionship, and a sense of partnership built over time. John had no reason to suspect anything. If someone had suggested Emily could deceive him, he would have laughed, not because he was naive, but because he thought he knew his wife. The trust between them was so solid that John saw no point in checking her phone, tracking her movements, or obsessing over small details. He wasn't that kind of man. He believed real love meant giving freedom. And Emily always used that freedom in a calm, predictable way without causing drama. In his mind, what they had was rare, a connection that had survived years. Financial struggles, the exhaustion of raising a child, and sleepless nights. They weren't a perfect couple, but they seemed strong until that one Friday, which seemed like just another night, but because of one small detail, revealed everything hidden. That Friday, Emily left the house around 7 in the evening. She made sure her daughter had eaten dinner, kissed John quickly, gave him a soft smile, and said she was meeting her cousin at a new restaurant they'd both wanted to try. She mentioned the reservation was at 7:30 and promised to be back before 11. John didn't pay much attention to the timing. He was used to these occasional outings. As she closed the door and disappeared into the night, he went to the living room, helped his daughter with a game on her tablet, put her to bed, read her a short story, and returned to the couch. It was an ordinary night. He picked up his phone and started scrolling through short videos on Instagram to relax and pass the time until Emily returned. After a few minutes of random content, he came across a live stream from a local comedian he'd followed for years, but rarely saw online. The video was being broadcast from a new bar that had opened that week. The place was crowded, the music loud, and the comedian was making off-the-cuff jokes about the people around him. John almost kept scrolling, but for some reason, let the video play. The camera moved casually, showing the crowd, full tables, and laughter in the background. Suddenly, in a distant corner, something caught his attention. A red sofa, a yellow light over a small group of people, and there, sitting sideways, holding a glass with a clear drink, was Emily. She was laughing naturally, completely at ease. The man next to her said something that made her lean in, touch his arm, and smile in that familiar way John knew so well. For a second, he thought it was someone else. The video quality flickered, and the camera moved quickly, but in just a few moments, it was clear it was her. Emily, no doubt. John froze, staring at the screen, his breath caught in his chest. His heart raced, but his body didn't move. He tried to make sense of what he was seeing. Emily had left the house wearing a simple floral dress and a light jacket. In the live stream, she wore a flashier top with sparkles on the shoulders. Her hair down when it had been tied up when she left. The man beside her was someone John didn't recognize. Emily didn't look embarrassed or worried. She was relaxed, fully engaged in the conversation, in the gestures, in the moment. It was as if she wasn't living a lie at all, as if this was her real life. He didn't know whether to stop the video, record the screen, or call someone. He only knew something inside him had changed, like he'd fallen from a building without warning. There was no misinterpretation, no doubt. The video showed everything with brutal clarity. Emily, who always claimed to be honest, who spoke of respect and values, was in a bar she'd never mentioned, with a man who wasn't family or part of any known circle of friends. She had lied. She had changed clothes along the way. She had planned it all. And he only found out because he happened to watch a random live stream that night. The broadcast continued for a few more minutes, and John stayed frozen, phone in hand, as if time had stopped. Emily was still there, laughing, drinking, leaning on the man, living a reality that had nothing to do with his world. The most painful part wasn't just catching her in the act, but how effortlessly she seemed to live it, as if she owed nothing to anyone, as if the home she'd left behind was a minor detail. John's trust collapsed silently between one social media post and the next. No shouting, no confrontation, but with the certainty that nothing would ever be the same. He saved the video, placed the phone on the table, went to the bathroom, washed his face, dried his hands, and returned to the living room. He didn't need more time to process it. What he saw had already decided what he would do. His daughter slept peacefully in her room, unaware of the massive shift about to happen. John turned off the living room lights, sat on the couch, and waited. At 11:28, he heard the key turn. Emily walked in smiling, casually taking off her shoes, saying the restaurant had been packed. Without a word, John held out his phone toward her. The video was paused at the exact moment, the image clear enough to erase any doubt. Emily, walking slowly down the hallway, stopped the second she saw the screen and recognized what was playing. Her eyes widened, her shoulders dropped, as if all strength had left her body. Just a few seconds of the video were enough to change her expression completely. Words failed her. She tried to mumble an explanation, saying it wasn't what it looked like, that things had gotten out of hand, that it was a misunderstanding. But nothing sounded true. She stammered about coincidence, tried to act surprised, and attempted to manipulate the moment with the same sweet tone that had worked so many times before. John, jaw clenched, held the phone firmly, not moving a muscle on his face. Finally, he spoke, his voice low but filled with indescribable pain. "How long has this been going on?" he asked, eyes locked on her. Emily hesitated, opened her mouth as if to answer, but nothing came out. Only her quick, shaky breathing filled the silence. John pressed again, more firmly. "Who is he?" The silence became deafening. Emily didn't say a word. Tears fell before she realized, as if her body was confessing what her mouth refused to admit. John waited a few seconds, giving her one last chance at honesty, but she just cried. Her trembling hands covered part of her face, her knees looked like they might give out, and the crying became uncontrollable. Then he let out a deep sigh, looked away, and said in a calm, almost unsettling tone, "You have until the end of tomorrow to leave this house." She froze, eyes wide, face wet with tears. Emily tried to step closer, whispering desperate pleas for a conversation, a chance to explain, to justify, to undo what she knew couldn't be fixed. But John was already walking up the stairs. His steps were firm, slow, without hesitation. He didn't yell, didn't slam doors, didn't make a scene. He carried the weight of someone who had trusted too much, believed too much, and been betrayed deeply. At the top of the stairs, he paused briefly, looked down, not directly at her, and said, "You always bragged about being an honest woman, someone who values truth. Well, now it's come out, but it didn't come from your mouth." He walked to the bedroom, leaving Emily alone in the hallway, crushed under the weight of her lie, with no chance left for redemption. Her crying echoed through the house, but it no longer had any effect. What needed to be said had been said, and what was done couldn't be undone. That night, John stayed in his daughter's room. He slept lightly, waking at every small movement she made, but inside he was fully awake. He wasn't thinking about revenge or despair, but about the next step. In the morning, he got up early, made breakfast for his daughter, and reviewed documents stored in the closet. Emily was still locked in her room. He didn't go looking for her. The only conversation left would be about the logistics of her leaving. Everything else was over. John called a lawyer he knew and set up a meeting for Monday, specifying he wanted to discuss separation with no attempt at reconciliation. He hung up. A few hours later, he left the house with his daughter like it was any other Saturday. They went to the grocery store, visited a friend, and stopped by his mother's house. John kept a calm expression the whole time. He didn't tell anyone, didn't vent, didn't spread the news. He kept the pain private, like a sensitive document, important and permanent. When he returned home late in the afternoon, his daughter asleep in the back seat, he carried her in his arms, entered quietly, walked through the living room where Emily waited with 2 suitcases, and gently laid his daughter in her bed, covering her up. When he returned to the hallway, Emily tried to say something. He didn't ask where she was going. He opened the garage door and with a nod pointed to the car. It was time. No more words, no goodbye look. Everything that needed to be said was in the video. Everything else was silence and separation. John went to his daughter's room, watched her sleep for a few minutes, then headed downstairs. There were no more suitcases in the living room, no perfume in the hallway. Emily's absence was now real. He needed to reorganize everything, but without rushing. The first step was taken. Emily was out of the house and out of his life. The next morning he woke before his alarm, made breakfast for his daughter, and dressed her to spend the day with his mother. He called his mom, asking if he could leave the girl there for a few hours, saying he needed to handle some things at home. His mother sensed something was wrong but didn't ask questions. She welcomed her granddaughter warmly and assured him she'd keep her as long as needed. With his daughter safe, John returned home and began the emotional cleanup he'd been preparing for since the betrayal. He started with visible things: her hairbrush, clothes in the closet, perfumes on the bathroom shelf. Everything that belonged to Emily was packed into 2 large boxes. He didn't dig through anything or look for hidden answers. He just gathered her things and sealed the boxes. He left them in the guest room and sent a short message. "Your things are here. You can pick them up whenever you want, as long as only your cousin is with you." Emily read it but didn't reply. After organizing the house, John sat with his laptop and made a plan, listing documents, bills, appointments, name changes, and every detail of the separation. He called the lawyer again, confirmed Monday's meeting, and made it clear he wanted everything handled efficiently with no room for back and forth. He backed up personal files, updated app passwords, and removed shared access permissions. Each click felt like a small release. In the afternoon, he went to his mother's to pick up his daughter. She was playing in the backyard with other kids from the family, smiling, carefree, unaware of what had happened. John crouched down, picked her up, and said they'd get a snack together. They stopped at a bakery and returned home with fresh bread. That simple routine became his anchor. He knew keeping stability for his daughter was part of rebuilding. That night, while brushing his teeth before bed, his daughter looked at him in the mirror and asked, "Daddy, is Mommy coming back home?" John knelt down, held her hands, and answered calmly, "Mommy's staying at her aunt's house for a while, sweetheart. She needs time to think things over, but she still loves you very much. You'll see her whenever you want, I promise." The girl frowned, thoughtful. "Can I go there tomorrow?" "Not tomorrow, but next weekend if you'd like. I'll take you. We'll spend time with her, have juice, play. How does that sound?" She smiled, relieved. "Can I bring my teddy bear?" "You can, and Mommy will be happy to see you with him." That's how the new rhythm began. John set up regular visits, taking his daughter to her aunt's house every other weekend, a simple place in a neighboring area where Emily was staying temporarily. The first few times were tense. Emily appeared hesitantly, eyes watery, trying to hide her guilt. She hugged her daughter tightly, spoke softly as if afraid a wrong word might break the fragile balance. John stayed at a distance, waiting outside, chatting with his sister-in-law, or watching the sky. He never went in and never wanted to. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Emily accepted the terms without argument. Fair division of assets, closure of joint accounts, and custody of their daughter went to John as the primary residence. The decision came from Emily. In one of the rare formal conversations with the lawyer, she said she didn't feel stable enough for full custody. "I need to find myself again," she wrote in an email the lawyer forwarded. John read it, nodded, and moved on. Shared custody remained on paper, but in practice the girl lived with her father. Visits with her mother continued on alternate weekends at her aunt's house, always with John present until the handover. For Emily, life after the separation wasn't easy. The guilt, initially a whisper, became a constant weight. She tried to restart her work as a graphic designer, but couldn't focus. She spent months in therapy, confronting not just regret over the affair, but years of unhappiness she'd ignored. She realized she had projected stability onto her relationship with John that was never real. And her escape had been less an act of courage and more an emotional breakdown disguised as freedom. 6 months after the divorce, she moved, accepting a project in a nearby city far from family, friends, and memories. She wanted a real fresh start. There she met a group of women going through reinvention, joined therapeutic retreats, and started painting as a form of expression. Slowly she rebuilt herself, not as the wife who failed, but as a woman who painfully learned the cost of authenticity. She maintained occasional contact with her daughter through birthday cards, small gifts sent by mail, and short videos on special days. John allowed their daughter to respond, always kindly but without pressure. "Mommy is far away, but she thinks about you," he'd say, and it was true. In the following months, John's life took on a new shape, piece by piece. There were good days, tough days, and others that felt like slow motion, but he never went back. The house became lighter despite the scars. John rearranged rooms, donated old items, changed pictures, and took down photos from the walls. There was no bitterness, just a genuine desire to rebuild. The bond with his daughter grew stronger. They created new habits: snacks on the couch on Fridays, walks in the park on Sundays, music to wake up to on Mondays. John picked her up from school whenever possible, attended meetings, school events, and homework sessions. He was more present than ever, and she noticed. Their connection became nearly unbreakable. Emily kept her distance, sending formal messages about their daughter's schedule or routine details. John responded only when necessary. Handovers and pickups were quick, with no side conversations. She seemed smaller, like someone who knew she no longer belonged. She tried to start conversations a few times, but John politely shut them down. For him, there was no reconciliation, only co-parenting. The betrayal was more than broken trust. It was proof she had left the relationship long before the affair. Over time, close friends and family asked about Emily. John didn't lie, but didn't share everything, saying only that they were separated and preferring not to elaborate. Friends respected that, and family understood. Some praised how he handled it, but John didn't want recognition. He wanted peace. Gradually, he stopped being the betrayed husband and became simply John, a man who rebuilt his life after a brutal fall without drama, exposure, or spectacle. The real turning point came one ordinary afternoon when he opened the school door and saw his daughter running toward him, a drawing in her hand. It was a colorful piece of paper full of childish scribbles and crooked handwriting. "Daddy, I love you so much. You're my hero." John took the drawing, knelt down and hugged her tightly. In that moment, he understood it all. The end of the marriage wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of a new one. He no longer looked back with bitterness or ahead with fear. He kept walking, feet on the ground, heart aligned with what mattered. He didn't need big speeches. The lesson was there, alive, beating. Loving someone doesn't mean ignoring betrayal or accepting less than you deserve. Love means knowing when to walk away even when it hurts. It means choosing yourself when the other person gave up long ago. John did that, and by doing so, he showed his daughter what dignity means. He showed her that truth sets you free, even when it hurts. Sometimes the greatest love of your life comes when everything falls apart. In the middle of loss, John found himself and never got lost again. In the quiet unraveling of John and Emily's marriage, we uncover a profound life lesson. True strength lies not in clinging to broken trust, but in the courage to walk away with dignity when betrayal shatters the foundation you've built. John's world crumbled in an instant, caught in the glow of a random live stream, revealing the woman he loved living a double life. Yet instead of rage or despair, he chose quiet resolve, protecting his daughter, rebuilding routines, and rediscovering himself amid the ruins. This story reminds us that love isn't blind endurance. It's knowing your worth, embracing the pain of loss to forge a brighter path. In the heartbreak, John found an unbreakable bond with his little girl, teaching her, and us, that self-respect blooms from the ashes of deception. Life's harshest blows often reveal our deepest resilience, turning endings into empowered beginnings. It's a raw truth. Sometimes letting go isn't defeat. It's the ultimate act of self-love. What about you? Have you faced betrayal and risen stronger? Share your stories in the comments below. I'd love to hear how you've turned pain into power. If this touched your heart, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for more inspiring tales of real-life wisdom. Let's grow together.